Hello, everyone. Hello, Laura. Nice to see you all. Oh, nice. Old face and new face.
It's always a pleasure to see many familiar faces.
Always a pleasure to be at Station F. So, for the little story, Hugging Face started at the very first batch of Station F a long time ago now. We're 10 years old. We did 3 years in this building with 3 different incubators.
Great. So I'm Laura. I lead founder experience at OpenAI, or as I often say, I work with people who are building the future. But today we're here to talk about physical AI, which is what I think everyone's...
We are both excited about.
Yeah, we're both extremely excited about. I feel like I spent the day talking to people about how people are using codecs in robotics. But there's never been anyone I've met who has a better horizontal view of what's happening in robotics and in physical AI than you. We can talk about Richie Mini, we can talk about Le Robot, or we can talk about everything that you're seeing. What are you most excited about in robotics right now?
In robotics, oh my God, there's so many things. I would say specifically for here, I'm very excited about the state of robotics in Europe, because I think Europe has a huge set of early or later stage companies. Some of them I've seen him, some of them I know for a long time. They're very promising. I think Europe has this huge industrial history. We know how to build stuff. And I think robotics is interesting because it's not yet a game of I need the largest data center, and that's basically ultimately the only thing that matters. It's a game of I can be smart how I build my robots, I can be smart how I train it. You cannot yet put 3 trillion parameters in a robot. You're constrained by latency, and that's also something that's very nice for us. So we can train small models, you can use open source. So I think it's a good area where I think Europe can build actually massive company.
Great. Okay. So as I said, you spend a lot of time here. You talk to. I've never met anyone in physical AI who doesn't know you or doesn't already work a little bit with Hugging Face. But not only do you spend a lot of time in Europe, you go to the US every month, and every quarter or every few months you also go to Shenzhen. How would you compare what you're seeing in the different markets?
It's interesting, yeah. I think people approach that very differently. Maybe one angle to see that is in Shenzhen or in China, people approach it with a very hardware focus. So typically, a typical robotics team in China will be like a team that used to build EV, and they start with a very strong manufacturing angle in mind. They're like, okay, how are we going to mass produce this? You get then robots like Unitree, very impressive. If you go visit the manufacturing line of Unitree, they test every single piece for reliability. Every single piece of the robot is tested over there. And so they really go quickly there, but then they maybe spend a little bit less effort or for now interest in the brain of the robots. So typically you will have this very impressive, I would say, hardware platform, but they don't really spend a lot of time in the brain. I think the US is almost the opposite. So you go to this company who are very like Apple, or like NVIDIA, they're fabless. They don't really build any robots, but they spend a lot of time on the algorithm on the brain, right? And robot is somewhere in the middle. So if you go in ETH, if you visit Zurich, you see these teams, they know really well how to build robots, but they're also very ML native. There are people who train, I think, who know how to train LLM or who know how to train VLM or world models. So I think Europe is nice having this both talent. And it's interesting that if you go in the US, for instance, you can categorize all the robotics companies if they are more hardware or software. And you see very little company who have both capabilities in-house at a high level. Maybe Tesla is one, and honestly, there is very little. And I think that's what's missing a lot in the US. And in Europe, I do see that.
Speaking of ETH Robotics, or ETH Zurich Robotics, they have this robotics club there that I get super excited about because I feel like Europe has come together in a way that I've not seen in the US or China or anywhere else to truly build community. So the robotics community and the collaboration that we're seeing in Europe right now is quite unique in time. So the Robotics Club in Zurich was self-organized by students, and they have a project that is run across the club where there's a team that's working on each part of the robot. So there's a part that's looking at joints, there's a part that's looking at the head, there's a part that's looking at the movement, there's a part that's looking at the software, and they're all, the different teams coming together to collaborate, so there's a lot of learning that happens. And then what they did was to work with a lot of the other universities around Europe and created the European Student Robotics Association. So it's 14 of the top technical universities in Europe with over, I believe, 2,500 students across the geography that are collaborating, that are hosting hackathons together. So I'm very, very bullish on where robotics is going to go in Europe from especially the younger talent that we see coming out of.
So let me ask you a couple of questions as well.
Yeah.
I know I've heard you recently became a head of global founders experience at OpenAI. Can you tell us a little bit, like, what is it for a robotic startup to work with OpenAI? You know, where you can help, how does it work? What's the founder experience when they work with you?
Well, first of all, I'll start with, I'm extremely fortunate because I had the best job in the world. Like, I wish all of you could have the joy that I have. I get to work with founders and investors and developers every day. And for 2 years, I got to do that with the best of the builders who are right here in Europe. And I'm extremely happy that the team that we built is now working really well. Whoever you are, wherever you are, if you're in Europe, you will get to work with the best startups team in the world. And Trisha Troth joined and is now running this team. And every single person is the best person I've ever worked with. So now that we have this fantastic team in the startups, I got to move on to say, okay, well, as a platform, we do extremely well in our developer experience, telling all of you how to get the most value out of the models. How do you build and how do you get to have all the benchmarks, and on the technical side, what is it that you want to build? Well, on the other hand, once you start commercializing and once you start building for others, how do you get the most value out of the platform OpenAI as a partner so that as a founder, you have a partner for success, that we're not just transacting and selling to you, but from day one, the moment you decide to build a company and you decide that you're in service of that use case and the users in that, we can partner with you so that we're there from day one all the way to exit, so that we can really see what it is that is a step change in strategically using us for growth and for value beyond the models. So everything and anything that is in sales.
And as a reminder, I mean, OpenAI was extremely big on robotics. I remember the hand and the robotics, you know, the Rubik's Cube. Maybe some of the people who were around in AI in 2000. I see some of the people were as old as me.
Right here.
2019, yeah, the hand and the Rubik's Cube. I'm very excited. I mean, I want to ask you, because I guess this is all under NDA, but about the new hardware coming.
Well, I'll tell you what. We are a research and deployment company. We've always done research and intelligence, and the very frontier of intelligence is what we want to continue to always do research on. So what is in research is very broad and vast. Obviously, robotics goes in there. Then there's product, and then there's deploying it. I work on the deployment side of things, so I don't know what and when will come out of research, but obviously we're doing a lot in making sure that we're at the forefront of robotics research. If and when something else comes up, we'll be very happy to share.
I know some of our Richie Mini came to OpenAI, so I don't know if it's for personal use or for research. I hope it's for research.
I've seen a lot of demos with it. Why don't you tell us? Okay, so Richie Mini sits on the desk. My daughter uses it. All my colleagues now use it. I walked in the office in Paris yesterday and I saw a few on our desks. There's Le Robot. We're seeing a lot of humanoids here. Tell us what you think about the different form factors. Humanoids, wheels, sliding. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm one of these person who is not so excited about humanoids. I think they are slightly scary. Every time I go at night, opening my fridge, I hope there is not a humanoid just standing there, and just, I don't know, being plugged. And I think I don't really like it. I like the weird form factors, the one that, you know, they're rolling at half. I like all these kind of Star Wars crazy things that you're like, doesn't really work, but why not? And I think also the nice thing is you can think about interesting things. So for instance, a humanoid always have by construction a lot of motors, because you have like the 60 or degrees of freedom you want, that's 60 actuators. So like the floor price is always going to be quite high. So it's going to be really hard to push that under 5,000. And for instance, we want to sell $500 robots, which means $500. We're going to have a walking robot soon this summer that we're going to unveil. There's going to be also $500 or 500 euro or something like that. I think you can only do that if you forget the humanoid form factor, if you go, OK, let's imagine other way. So yeah, I think that's one thing I'm way more excited about. I also think in terms of even just human interaction, it's even more fun to interact with something that's not just in the uncanny valley by construction, right? I feel like you can think about new way to interact. And then if you think, OK, we're going to put that for use, there's a lot of very interesting companies here that are already deploying, like I was chatting with Thomas from Sunrise just before I came on stage. They are already deploying in factories, right? And the way they decided is, OK, we're not going to have something that moves. We have this bimanual setup, and basically that's way enough for doing a lot of things. So I think you're way more free to already using robots today if you don't have to build a full humanoid that's supposed to be able to react to any possible situation in the world. What about you? I mean, maybe asking you I also know you help entrepreneur a day. I also know in the weekend you're also investor in some startups. In terms of physical AI, do you have some recommendation or some advice that you always say to early startups?
I mean, I'll tell every startup that they should use Codex, because obviously it's the best tool for any engineer, no matter what it is that they do. And I'm not saying this just as that I work at OpenAI and I'm an investor. It is the fact that everyone that I spoke to here told me an interesting use case that I wouldn't have thought of. So for example, Benedict Tassi, who's over there from Alonic, they're building a different weaving factor that could create the skin for robotics.
Totally amazing, by the way.
Yes, they are. They're incredible. Qualia is another company that was started by a Swedish founder in Denmark. And they're doing a lot of things that are still in stealth. But when I speak to him about how they're using Codex, he said, there is so much capability now that comes from the multimodality that Codex has. All the tests that we do, all the agents that we build on the back of it, whether it is simulations and different kinds of simulations for testing, whether it's creating a database of what has worked and hasn't worked in an experiment, so that we can then create agents that understand what hasn't worked and then create new kinds of data in the back to further understand and combine the different experiments. Whether it is Orbit, which is an incredible team that uses 4 arms for robots in space, and it's a team that comes out of ETH Zurich. They've created a whole dashboard that creates all the different parts of the robot so that they have a command and control center that can be used for the robot, but also when the robot is deployed in the different deployments. So you have a huge database that you can build. Then you're creating multimodality from the images, the video, the analysis of everything that's happening. You're using voice to control, and the bidirectional voice that we're investing in over and over again. All the capabilities of how the robots are then interacting with the real world, because for most people, where AGI is going to be felt is in voice. So there's so much that you can do from your control center from Codex that I think robotics teams are some of the most sophisticated users of agentic capabilities of it.
Truly. And maybe, by the way, my first recommendation for them is usually to not avoid the sophistication, but to really dive in it. So the best team we've seen, and actually a lot of them are also here from Paris, thinking about, for instance, Genesis released a very impressive demo a few weeks ago. It works when you dive really in all the details of how you train from the ML models down to the firmware, down to how you interact, down to the actuator. You actually need to go super deep in all this vertical if you want to get a model that really not only do this nice demo, but is actually something that push the state of the art. I think there is 2 things that are really very important to grab in robotics. The first one is this: you will need to be super technical and technical on a lot of aspects to really solve this problem. And the second one is data. You will need to really understand your data, clean it, find it, because it's way more complex than for LLM. I think you need to get it. And a lot of the challenge we see is around getting high quality data, getting it clean, using the right tools to, like you were saying, the dashboard to visualize it, understand which part of the data is interesting, which part of what your robot is doing is actually bad or good, which is way harder in robotics because you can't just read it or just ask people to read it. You have to watch it.
Yeah.
I think people need to be extremely technical.
Well, so I have a thing. Like, I get very excited by technical builders. And I think in AI, a lot of people can build a lot of things. In robotics, you truly have to be technical. Like, you don't just wake up and say, I'm going to work in robotics. But if you do decide to take up the technical skill of robotics, the fact that there's so much around it that Codex can now do for you, and how much further, how much faster you can go is really important. And like, speaking of Sunrise, we were just having a conversation with Thomas. He was saying things that previously would take months are getting cut to weeks. Things that used to take days are getting cut to hours. And what is now in line of sight of how to build the software around the control of what is possible is where the big delta is happening. Because yes, we can build the technology, but how does it get adopted? How do you test it? How do you make sure that it works? How do you take it from theory and technical lab into people's hands, into the factories, into manufacturing, into logistics, into operations, into the home around your kids and everything else in between? So robotics is not, as all of you know, a singular thing. It is all the things. It is how you collect data. Companies like MicroAGI, who I saw walking around earlier, and they're doing the highest quality of data collection to train robots and data sets, all the way to the deployment and the control, and everything in between. So given this is a whole new intelligence layer industry that is growing on top of what we already have, I think we need to have a blue sky where people have the power to go into the innovation that is the delta for what they want to do and bring to the world.
I think Codex is helping a lot on that, right?
Yes,
I was
it
just
is.
chatting with Jim Fan, and NVIDIA is also here. There's a lot of people. Jim is the lead of robotics there. We were chatting about this very impressive project they have called Inspire, where basically they use an agent to build the training loop and to build a training recipe to train the robots. I think that's really the future, which is you're going to use these amazing coding tools, this amazing like Codex, GPT 5.6, that I'm happy is out finally,
Yep.
and that we can play with to basically help you build this research loop to create your robots.
Well, I have to say, on 5.6, the feedback we've gotten is excellent so far, and I look forward to more people being able to use it. But if I were to close very quickly, we are talking about a lot of things, we're seeing a lot of things, we're traveling in many places. What is the thing you're most excited about, or you'd like to tell the audience, or leave them with?
Oh my God.
You want me to answer first?
Yeah, I'll let you answer first.
Well, for me, as I said, the thing that gets me very excited is very technical builders. The other thing that gets me very excited and is what's in my heart is community. I love it when people build in public. I know right now there's truly the moment of robotics and physical AI, but to see the community come together and to see how people are informing each other, but mostly to see how much is coming from every corner of, let's say, Europe, EMEA, the world, is what I get most ambitiously passionate about. Because, you know, Sunrise, we mentioned, comes from Slovenia. But we've seen companies in the Czech Republic, we're seeing companies in Estonia, we're seeing companies in Helsinki and in Sweden and in Spain. And like every corner of Europe has a lot of history that hasn't necessarily been tech first, but our history that is uniquely, incredibly European is what gives us the right as a community to become leaders in the world in this new technology. And I want to see us win.
Words to live by. I think there's no better way to end, and I see it's blinking anyway. Thanks a lot, everyone, for listening.